council meeting to order. And Dan, can we take roll, please?
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Erickson. Councilmember Valento.
Here.
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
And Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And our agenda is approved. First item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council on any topic of your choosing. And Mr. Waller?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I'm John Waller. I live at 14010 Homestead Avenue, Hugo, Minnesota, but it's still in the Forest Lake School District. And I'm also, for full disclosure, the Washington County Manager on the Rice Creek Watershed District. I'm not speaking for the Board of Managers tonight. I'm speaking as a tax-paying citizen here in this district. And before I go any farther, Mayor, may I approach the
Sure.
dais and give a handout?
Absolutely.
I've already got mine, John. Thank you.
Yes, copy.
First, Ms. Mayor and the council, thank you very much. I'm very honored to have your support over the years and very humbled by it. It's been very nice and very helpful. As you know, there have been some changes on the Rice Creek Board which favor the authority of cities to make appointments. Last year, in mid-year, the Supreme Court of the state of Minnesota said that the president of the Rice Creek Board had not been appropriately appointed. It was challenged by Circle Pines. And in December of last year, the district court revoked the appointment. So it gives the city a lot more authority now in who's going to be members on these boards. That's what Circle Pines' complaint was. And so with that idea that local control is more important these days, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, the importance of local control, particularly over the Stormwater Conveyance and the Wetland Conservation Act. Now, some years ago, probably 20 now, I guess, Hugo decided to become the local authority for the Stormwater Conveyance Act, and they adopted the Rice Creek Watershed Rules by ordinance. And they also took over the local unit of government authority as the Wetland Conservation Act. And there was some hem and haw by the staff for a while, but after not having to deal directly with Rice Creek over every pedantic matter, they are very happy with that. In fact, we've seen Circle Pines take it up and Mounds View. So I guess we could say there's a movement, although not large. There's 28 cities yet. So I'd encourage you to sit down and take a look just exactly what is the difference between watershed district rules and your MS4 authority that's granted by the state and that you're required to do. I don't think you're going to find a big difference. And so if there isn't a real significant difference, it brings up the question of why are we paying a city tax and a watershed tax for a double service twice. And by the way, the city has the authority here to shut something down if it's not being done. Rice Creek can only go to civil court, and it takes us months. So if the silt fence isn't in properly, the building inspector can pull the permit, whereas Rice Creek, we pay lawyers and engineers for a lawsuit. It's not a good system, but it would be better. So I also handed out to you tonight a copy of the final of the 2022 Watershed District Taxes by Municipality. You will find that Rice Creek is there. You'll also find that this is all of the watersheds that are here in Washington County, so you'll have Comfort Lake, Forest Lake. And you can compare us on Rice Creek by taking a look at your city and running across and seeing where the Rice Creek is, and it's $181,875. And I think when I first spoke in front of this council, it was around 125,000, so it's growing quite a bit. And so I just point that out to you. The second thing I gave you today was that a copy of an old bill that was in the legislature. You'll see it's both House and Senate. It was bipartisan at the time. Representative Detmer and Senator Housley on the Republican side, which are our representatives, and of course Uyghur and Fisher, which are no longer our representatives because of redistricting on the other side. And some of them have retired, like Detmer and Uyghur. That basically said that 90% of the $1 million collected by Rice Creek and Washington County had to be spent back here in the cities. And it went pretty far. It didn't get any hearings because one of the senators at the time, who was no longer in the Senate because he lost his election, put an end to it. It was at that time. So, but I did just point that out to you. That's a thought of how you can come up with dollars in order to pay for things that you need to pay for. And I would also have read recently in the newspaper that you're going to have a hearing in front of the Planning Commission about wetland. I don't have any objection to what I read so far, except I don't think it goes far enough. I would ask that you consider becoming the local unit of government and have full management of these wetland credits and where it goes, and especially when you're planning for things and how they do. One of the things that you must be careful about with private wetlands is that once they collect the dollars, there's a maintenance fee on this, and there's no way to enforce the maintenance. They can simply just let the land go back tax title, and the public is stuck with it. You can walk away with $100,000 an acre. You know, that's a lot of money these days. I don't know anybody who's selling land anywhere in Washington County that's, you know, in our area for $100,000 an acre that's just bare land. But you can get that for wetland credits, and there's some expenses and costs to it. I guess that's kind of most of what I have to say. I hope that the tax money that the watershed districts collect is able to be returned to the city to cover the administrative costs of the Wetland Conservation Act and the stormwater conveyance system. And so I know this is long-term things to be done, but I'm just beginning my career now. I believe this is my 17th year. So I forgot to put in for the pension. What a foolish person I am, huh? So anyways, but thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you for your service to us as well. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in open forum this evening? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring conversation back to council, and council for your consideration tonight are consent agenda items 6A through 6I. I will entertain a motion or any changes to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve consent agenda 6A through 6I.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to our regular agenda. First item this evening is Resolution 582301, which is the donation for the downtown transient dock from the Forest Lake Association. And Dan, are you walking us through this?
Mayor, members of council, before you this evening is Resolution 050823-01, which is a resolution accepting a donation from the Forest Lake Association in the amount of $15,000. This generous donation will be used towards the purchase of the new transient dock sections for downtown Forest Lake. The new transient dock will bring the number of transient slips in downtown to between 24 and 27. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 050823-01 with gratitude.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. I would move that council approve Resolution 582301 with gratitude. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, and motion carries. Our next item this evening is 7B, the 2023 Public Works and Engineering Standards Update. Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, tonight we're here to formally have you guys approve and adopt the 2023 Public Works and Engineering Standards updates that have been completed. This is something we do annually based on things that we see or deal with over the year in construction, and or sometimes MnDOT changes language on how some of the stuff should be worded. And with some staff changes, we want to change the project acceptance form to align with the named positions of staff that we have today. And then some of the private language that was related to private developments, we don't want to have it in multiple places where we had been. So instead of it being truly outlined in the development agreements or in the city ordinance, we just took it out of here, so it's not another area that you might forget to update. And basically just make it truly engineering standards and design standards and materials that contractors would use on private jobs that are gonna be in public right away. Now, if it's on a private job, if it's gonna be privately owned and maintained, they still have the entitlement to do whatever they want to use for materials that might be differently than what the city would require in public right away. Have standardized materials and design to those, just making sure, like such as hydrants, so they fit all the hoses that the fire chief already has. Storm grates, so if Public Works has one get broken, they just grab another one at the shop or have the same order. So that's kind of what we're here tonight. And within my memo is the outline of the items that are being suggested to be changed. If there's not any other questions, I just request that the city council formally adopt these so we can have these posted on the website and give these to private developers when they're, coming into the public infrastructure and or just to be ready on any subdivision work that comes forward too.
Understood. Thank you, Ryan. In practice, these are questions that come up from time to time as the individuals that are considering projects would have a question, or somebody wonders, why are we holding somebody to a certain standard? And so this is kind of our opportunity as council to review them and provide our approval of the standards or ask questions. With that, this, the floor is council's, and this can be as, sometimes this is a longer conversation and sometimes this has been a short conversation. It's really up to us and kind of what our appetite is to dig in. With that, just open up for any questions.
Thank you. I read through this thing the best I could, Ryan. It was like 30 pages, something like that. My question is really, how is it different from the 2022 standard? I mean, were there big differences or any points?
These are the changes, and some of them are just very minor. MnDOT changed some language, added some things to better clarification on a detail plate, stuff like that. We're not actually changing any standards that a contractor would be required to construct for a private job or a development on public infrastructure. Even if it is public infrastructure, the developer has the ability to come in with a PUD and he can be requesting flexibilities through that.
Sure.
Sometimes it's a reduced right of way, right? So we already go through that process, through the development process through a PUD. But these are, change Ramnack to rope to remove specific manufacturer added in ASTM 443. So it's,
Well,
some
the reason-
material that goes inside a concrete structure, just change it.
The reason I asked the question is the fact that the developers and the contractors and whoever have been using this standard for a long, long time.
Yep.
There aren't really any surprises here. We're just adopting something that's been the standard, so.
Any questions or points of clarification, points of discomfort?
Yeah, just so being the first go around for me on this, these standards are just something that we've had that Bolton and Mink has worked with the city to come up with over the years, and that's where we're at now, except with a few changes.
You've had majority of these standards even back in the township city days. And it's just an ongoing document where we want to stay consistent with what's within ASTM standards, MnDOT construction materials test, naming convention. And then sometimes here or there's some confusion on what a detail plate might actually be trying to represent. So there's one area where we changed where the location of the elevation is shown, and stuff like that. We had to change any actual material on anything that we've constructed in the past or any widths. We did change, so on our typical residential road, it's 4 inches thick. We used to go 2 inches and 2 inches. Now we're going 2.5 and 1.5 to get better base supports through the development work. So, all that pounding with construction equipment, we're not gonna break up pavement as easy because we're gonna have more strength with a thicker base, but then the developer has less wear course to put down.
Trade-off. Yeah.
All right,
Makes Makes sense.
common sense, right?
Sense.
So,
Any other questions reviewed and,
Madam Mayor,
Don't have
I have,
anything.
I have no problem, you know, based on what we know, it's been around here for a long, long time, that I'd have no problem supporting the new. So I'd make a motion that we do accept the 2023 Public Works and Engineering Standards update as presented from Ryan.
motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. That is the end of our planned action agenda this evening. We do not have a workshop discussion topic on the agenda, which is not uncommon, but just a note for council that we do have a fairly lengthy workshop discussion plan for next Monday, so I would not expect that to be a short meeting, and lots of information, I'm sure, to be presented, so. What we might give you back in time today, we will take in spades on Monday, I'm sure. Let's move into a staff update with a shorter agenda. We have a shorter number of staff here this evening as well, so we can, but let's still do a staff update. And Dan, if you want to kick us off.
Yep, Mayor, members of council, just a quick update on the transient dock. We're still on track for install prior to Memorial Day weekend. I believe, hopefully they should be here either this week or next week, and I know they're gonna be installed, so should be on track. That dock should be in and ready to go before Memorial Day weekend, which was the goal, and we got that project approved, so glad to hear we're still on track for that. Also, if you haven't had a chance, stop out at the Forest Lake Airport. The apron expansion is currently being constructed, and it's making, I was out there on Friday, and the amount of activity out there is almost mind-blowing, how fast they were getting through that subcut out there. So apron expansion's underway, started last week, and they're looking to complete hopefully either late this week or early next week, so that expansion area will be done, and there'll be tie downs that will be in hardscape versus the grass, which is a significant improvement to the airport. Those are my two updates. If you have any questions of me, happy to answer them.
Any questions for Dan? All right, Patrick.
Yes, since Dan mentioned the dock, I talked to Dave Adams today, and the dock will be in tomorrow.
Yeah, yay.
They're
Nice.
installing it tomorrow.
Even better.
So we'll have that. Last week, I met with the Met Council area representative and talked to her about the interceptor line and transportation, and trying to understand what those plans are going to be, if there are any plans.
In particular, in transportation, is this around the bus line and?
Right, we used to have a bus line, we have an empty transportation center down south. Right now, there are no plans, but I asked her if there are going to be future plans, and can we look at that? I also said if there's no future plans for that, maybe a small local route that transported people to the next transportation, like we do with the senior bus. Maybe there's some option they can do something like that, some kind of a small thing, but we'll see.
Expansion on that, because we are still paying a transportation fee.
Yes, we are.
As part of our,
Yeah, we
Local
pay the
taxes,
transportation fee. We absolutely have no transportation
Right.
going anywhere at this point. Once the pandemic hit, they cut so many bus routes. And so we're trying to get that back at least to here, or at least a local route that may transport our seniors or anybody down to the next stop, something like that. And again, we'll see. So I thought that was an important contact there. I have no updates on what the legislative body is doing. If you guys know better than I do, or can tell what they're doing, you're better people than I, because I have no idea what's going on there. Keep trying,
I'm
though.
not even hearing think about what's coming up. I'm not even hearing bonding bill even being listed. And of course, I'm only seeing major media, but
Yeah, there
there was
is
a
no
time
mention
when
of
even-
bonding bills at
yeah.
all. And that's unfortunate if that's the way that goes. And then as the mayor pointed out, next week, next Monday on the 15th, we have an update on the 10-year plan, which will center on park projects and building needs. That'll be the final two pieces of the 10-year plan. We'll try to summarize all that together. I also asked that beginning next week to start budget discussions on the council priorities. If there are priorities or you want things that may be included in the budget, please start to make your list. Let us know what those are.
that's Monday.
next Monday, if you get them, I will ask you again for the next couple of workshops if you have them. If there's anything that you want, anything that you particularly see necessary that we don't provide, or anything that we shouldn't provide, which I don't believe there's anything we can cut, but if there's additions, please let us know so that we can calculate those, see if they're A, necessary, B, if they're affordable. So if you have your lists, just let us know. That's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Amanda?
No updates.
All right. And Ryan?
No updates unless you have any questions.
All right. Start with council updates. Start with Councilmember Roberts.
I attended the last planning commission meeting, couple good projects moving forward. The one that had the most, I guess, attention was this gas line situation that they're proposing, and I guess a question more than an update is that something ultimately council will decide on
Yes.
to allow that? And do you know what that time frame might be?
I do not, based on the last meeting, so no, I don't.
Okay. And you'll provide us with some information beforehand so
Oh,
that
absolutely.
it's just, I guess I never even realized, I mean, I knew there was out there, but, you know, they're talking about going under a lake out there and some really interesting things, and some of the neighbors are not real happy about it, as you can expect, so. That's all I have.
Councilmember Valento?
Nothing from me tonight.
All right. Councilmember Husnick?
Thank you. I attended the EDA meeting this evening, and just prior to the council meeting, and Mara, I'm sure will expand on it, we just talked about the Headwaters 123 and the shoreline update and that kind of thing. So a couple of things from the area Chamber of Commerce. Also attended the school board meeting, which occurred last Thursday. And not a whole lot going on. It's the normal things. They did have a report on their DARE program, which has been fairly active, especially over in Scandia. So they're doing some really positive work with that. They talked about the fact that they were able to avert a strike on the bus drivers, so they got that straightened out. And then they received about $16,000 total in donations. They had about 3 retirements, and they had one policy thing that failed a vote, but, and I didn't really follow up on it to find out exactly what that was all about, but that'll be the end of my report, so, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Just a couple quick updates from me. I attended the Joint Fire Board meeting last week. Chief Newman provided us with an update on just kind of the 2022 year-end review, and then started in on the conversation, kind of prepping for budget around just the kind of the need for overall continued focus on wage parity and making sure that we've got an attractive wage level that is maintaining it also, well, that is retaining our current strong firefighting staff, but also allowing us to recruit as we need to expand. I think council will recall, and I was just helpful for me to just remember this as well, that we had talked about a multi-year plan that would ultimately move us from current level of firefighter wages, which were in the teens and thankfully now are closer to in the high teens, to something that would over a number of years move us into something where at least the hourly rate would be benchmarked based off of a patrol officer. Certainly the dollar numbers are much different just because it's a paid on call position. You know, we had committed to starting that plan, and we had made a substantial increase last year. But also it was just helpful to have the reminder that there is another hourly substantial increase coming. Now, from a budget standpoint, it's not giant because we're talking about, a very limited number of hours. But it is as we talk about lots of shifts happening in the budget, is another area where we are trying to get caught up, and we had started a plan, and I think it's just helpful to keep that in mind as we're thinking about budget for this upcoming year. Chief always does a great job of reminding us that the alternative is to move from a paid-on-call model to a full-time staff model, which is, $2 to $3 million a year, and so I think it's in our interest to find a way to make this work. And the conversation at the fire board was just kind of setting the groundwork for some more detailed budget conversations coming later this year. And then as Councilmember Husnick mentioned, had a good EDA meeting tonight, really just on updates, providing background to new EDA around some of the history of what we've done with the Headwaters 123 projects, and then also really showing us some of the drawings that have been done, just to illustrate some of the different platting options for different development projects. That's essentially done, and one of the tools that we've added to that toolkit, and we just kind of got an update from Dan on, development. There's always a little bit of development activity, and got an update on what kind of that current market environment seems to be with rising interest rates, but yet still some solid demand in some of those segments. Dan, anything you would add specific around Headwaters update for?
Just basically, we were starting to broaden out the marketing a little bit as well. So we've been primarily focused data technology for the past probably 3 to 4 years, and now looking at, on some of the marketing materials, changing it from technology park to business park. Again, just sort of it's a small change, but it sort of broadens out that market space. Still seeing interest in the site, given the fact that it was under a letter of intent for about 9-10 months in 2021 to 2022, it's starting to see traction where we are getting interest on I would say a fairly regular basis at this point, kind of a potpourri of uses ranging from data centers to technology manufacturing to warehousing. So a little bit of everything is coming in at this point. But at this point, no serious offers, but we're just in as broad of a market space as we possibly can. But still, a lot of the work to date has been primarily focused on data technology, but we're not exclusive to that. And one of EDA is to be aware that we're not exclusive on the data side of it. Another thing that was brought up as a limiting factor potentially to the site is getting the power ramp to that site if they need more additional power, from a data standpoint. Just there's been some supply chain issues that have really hit transformer construction hard, and that's kind of blowing out some of that potential timelines for getting the power to ramp up to that site as a new sort of wrinkle in that marketing. But it's not unique to Headwaters. That's nationwide. Everybody's sort of facing the same boat in terms of trying to ramp up power at this point.
All right, end of my planned update and end of our planned
Just
agenda.
ask one other
Yeah.
question. If we could maybe at workshop or whatever to speak to the topic that Mr. Wallner spoke to us, to learn a little bit more about that. Would be
In particular around becoming a local government unit of, is that?
yeah.
You talked to us on many topics, so, but more of us taking a more active role in water management and, it'd be interesting, so to that point, I think and just kind of teeing up the discussion, it'd be interesting to understand kind of the difference of how we are run versus kind of illustrating side by side what happens, for example, in a Hugo, and how that gets funded ultimately. Does Hugo pay for that, and some of the pros and cons of being in more of that active management model. Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for council to understand, especially as we've had some, we have some current agenda topics on wetland banking and other things that certainly there's a lot of crossover. Agree. Maybe June, get through May's workshop and maybe a June workshop. Okay. All right. Being the end of our planned agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.